Hello everyone, welcome to Katharine's Creatures. This is a series where I get to touch base upon and talk a little bit about various mythological creatures, beast beings, and the like pulled from lore worldwide. And I always like to preface by saying I'm not a linguist, so if I mispronounce anything, I do apologize in advance. I try my best. And today, for episode 151, I actually have a little background of why I selected this particular creature for this week. Because as I am filming, this will be my release week for the Guardian Speaker Volume 16, which is my final installment of my own dark retelling of Nordic myth. And so this week's creature, which is the Vargr, is featured and pops up on a variety of the volumes throughout the series. And I'm just super excited that I will be finally finishing my second book series. I can't believe it. Anywho, that's why I decided to choose this particular animal today. And so, the Vargr. What is the Vargr? Well, the Vargr is an animal from Norse mythology. Go figure. And it is essentially a wolf. Now, though it could be referring to any wolf, essentially, more often than not, it was in reference to Fenrir. And Fenrir was this massive, monstrous wolf, and actually a child of Loki. And he was predicted, Fenrir, he was predicted to be the downfall of Odin, and that the god, the king of the gods, essentially, of Nordic myth. And Odin wasn't a fan of this idea, nor this prediction, so he had Fenrir tricked, chained away, and locked up until Ragnarok, where upon Fenrir will break free, and in the end, destroy Odin. Now, outside of Fenrir, pretty much any of Fenrir's kin and offspring could also be referred to as Vargr, and there are a number of famous wolves in Nordic myth, including Hati and Skoll, and those are the two wolves that eternally chase the sun and moon. It's why both of them are supposed to orbit, is because they're always being chased by these two wolves, and again at Ragnarok, both the sun and moon will be consumed by Hati and Skoll. Now, another pair of wolves also thought to be related to Fenrir are Odin's pets, interestingly enough. And they were called Freki and Geri. And they're often depicted, if you see Odin, you'll see either two of his ravens, Hugin and Munin, but sometimes you'll also see him with a pair of wolves, and that's because those are his pets. And they appear periodically. But they're also termed a lot of times as Vargr. Now, outside of Nordic myth, let's step back for a moment. So the word Vargr, again, was Old Norse. And a lot of Nordic words were anglicized over the years, and they changed. So the anglicized word for Vargr is warg. And if that sounds familiar, it's because J.R.R. Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, he used that word to describe his wolves in his books that all relate to Middle Earth. And in his version, the wargs are particularly large, normally evil creatures that the orcs use as essentially an animal to ride. Like some other people use horses, well, orcs oftentimes use these giant wolves. And that's where warg in modern fantasy kind of became prevalent through Tolkien. Now, other authors have decided to kind of, again, utilize this concept of wolves and giant wolves throughout fantasy in general, but keeping true to the term warg / now Vargr / warg, J.R.R. Martin, another fantasy author, referred to warg as essentially a skin changer. So a different type of fantastical creature, and skin changers are a fantastic subcategory of fantasy entities, and can get into that one another time. But for Martin, he referred to his own skin changers as warg. So that's a little bit of fun facts. Now, outside of that, there's another one thing I do want to add. Again, talking about the evolution of language, which is really neat to me, is where once Vargr became warg, another word came up in the Old English language, and that was were, W-E-A-R-H, were. And that was in reference to some kind of outcast who, by definition, could be strangled to death, which is rather unpleasant. But it is interesting that the word that referred to these kind of heinous or unfriendly. Typically, wolves became something that then referred to something outcasted, which, going back to Fenrir, makes a lot of sense because he was essentially outcasted from the gods and chained away until Ragnarok. Dun dun dun. Okay, so that's all I have today about Vargr. Vargr, if you have any questions about this or anything else, please post them in the comments below or reach out to me on any of my social media. And until next time, everyone, skål.